Hey there, kiddos, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank. Well, that you are having a great day, and in today's video, I'm sitting back in my very squeaky chair, relaxing and boldly going where no fat man on his squeaky chair in his garage has ever gone before. That's right. In today's video, I'm having a little conversation with all of you guys about the old Star Trek customizable card game. And you guys do have to forgive me before we begin. Whenever I say the word star, I am very tempted to follow it up with wars. So if I do say Star Wars instead of Star Trek in this video, do forgive me. It's just, I like Star Wars more than Star Trek. It's just how it is. But yeah, with the full reveal, the information we know now of the upcoming Star Trek Universes Beyond set for Magic the Gathering, and with the request of one of the guys over on Discord, I figured now was a good time to go back to one of the earliest trading card games on the market and talk about it, both from a historic perspective and from the perspective of someone who was never a big fan of Star Trek, because I never really was. Like I said, I was always a Star Wars kind of guy. You know, it's just how it is. But yeah, to say that Star Trek the CCG is an influential and very early card game for the market, that would be a bit of an understatement. In fact, it was like the debut card game for Decipher, one of Wizards of the Coast's first and, in my opinion, biggest rival in the 90s. The Star Trek game came out in 1994. It was Decipher's debut card game. It was quite impressive to see that they had gotten the license for Star Trek seemingly almost immediately as soon as Magic hit the board. You know, there was this whole race to get your own card game out there after people saw just how successful Magic the Gathering was. So yeah, Star Trek was one of the first properties to get their own rival card game for Magic. And it's kind of crazy that here we are 30 years later, and now they are in Magic. Fun stuff. So, Star Trek, the customizable card game, as first envisioned, was a very experimental, very interesting card game, originally released as kind of a Star Trek the Next Generation based card game. This is important because the Next Generation, if I understand correctly, had finished its initial run like just a few months before this card game came out. So it was very fresh in people's minds. People were very fond of the characters, the crew. A lot of the episodes were pretty memorable from what I understand. Again, didn't watch it, just going off of hearsay and secondary accounts. But also, from what I can understand, this game was a smash hit. It lasted quite a while. It lasted way longer than most of Decipher's other card games, in fact. You know, Decipher very much experiences that 2-year wall with most of their card games, but not with Star Trek. It lasted from 1994 all the way up to 2007. And it did go through some iterations there. We'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, like at its core, that's over a decade. That is quite the leap for any card game, honestly, on this market, especially when you see new card games come and go so often. Every year there's a new one coming and a new one dying, it seems. So Star Trek, standing the test of time for a decade is quite impressive. Let's make no mistake about that. And in a way, it's still around, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So first things first, there were loads of sets. It was very popular, like I said. I think the first edition had 20-ish sets, maybe 21, maybe 22. And I say first edition because something that Decipher was doing was iterating on their design, testing new things out, experimenting, because again, the mid-90s to the early 2000s was a very experimental time for card games. People were still figuring out what mechanics worked, what mechanics didn't work, how much complexity was right for a card game. Everybody was experimenting with this. Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Just a few years later, but Decipher was really trying a whole lot of stuff out with Star Trek. And as a result, there was a bit of a bloat, a bit of a complexity creep to the game, which made it harder and harder to learn and play the game and keep up with some of the crazy mechanics. And so, in 2002, I think, Decipher announced the second edition, which was kind of a return to zero, fresh, clean slate for the game, where The basics are still there, uh, and the core identity of the TCG is still intact, but it was designed to kind of address the complexity growth that the game had experienced since the 90s, and kind of ended up becoming its own thing, its own second game. It shares a lot of identity with the first edition, but for all intents and purposes, the second edition of Star Trek customizable card game is its own thing, just so we're clear. But like I said, it does share a lot. They both do have the same overall goal of winning missions or accomplishing missions in order to score points. And scoring points is important because the first person to get 100 points wins. Missions are not some random objective, by the way. They are actual cards you play in the game when you are setting up in the first phase of the game. The seed phase, which is the setup phase, which is not an actual gameplay phase so much as it is setting the board. So I'm going to be very transparent with you guys. I have played this game twice, I think. Period. And it is definitely 1 or 2 IQ points above me. I did try my best to learn the rules when I played it, and I really didn't grasp what I was looking at. Now, maybe it's because I was playing one of those, like, 1999 super complex sets or whatever, but really, at the end of the day, this is just something that, in my opinion, plays more like a very, very interactive board game rather than a card game. So, bear in mind, I'm not going through all the rules in detail, just covering the basics, all right? There are mission cards you can accomplish to earn points. First person to 100 points wins. Got it? Awesome. You can do all kinds of other stuff during the setup phase. You plant your missions. You select dilemmas to interrupt your opponent with. All kinds of good stuff. But that's just the setup phase, right? There's the actual play phase where all the actual action of the game happens, which is deceptively complex. You see, you can only play one card a turn, from what I understand, in this card game. But you can do as many orders as you want until you are interrupted, until your characters are stopped. And those orders are... there's a lot you can do, okay? Each character has their own stats. There's a whole bunch of different interactions you can have with your opponent and with your own characters. There's a lot of complexity here in the game, and like I said, I'm not going to go over all of it. Just know that there is a lot to it. That is very fun, I think, at a glance, especially with all the faction stuff going on. Because there are factions in the game. Only certain factions can complete certain missions, for instance. Fun stuff. But the basic order of play is you play a card, one card. You execute all your orders until you're stopped. And then you draw a card at the end of your turn. And then your opponent does things. There are 2 kinds of missions you can accomplish. You can set ships filled with their crew to complete space missions. Ooh. And individual teams full of guys you beam down to planets can accomplish planet missions. And different missions have different points you can earn. And importantly, missions are not locked to the player who placed them. Your opponent can play your missions, and you can claim your opponent's missions. And that way, it kind of turns it into a race to see who can accomplish as many activities across the board state as possible. Because, yeah, it does kind of play out like a very interactive board game. Again, in my experience, in my opinion. Which, again, makes it feel very complex right out the gate. But at the same time, I know that some people like that kind of gameplay style. That kind of slow, methodical setup and then high-paced, high interaction, back and forth gameplay. And I know sorry, I know that people enjoy it because Decipher lost the license to the Star Trek franchise, which is why the game died. It didn't die because it dropped off a bridge in terms of popularity. Sales weren't declining. Nothing like that. No, Decipher lost the Star Trek license, from what I understand, and they weren't able to renew it after it expired. Which happens. This wasn't even the first time it happened to them. They think they lost Lord of the Rings first. Oh, I need water. There's something in my throat. But anyway, Decipher lost the license. Hang on. Oh, my throat is really scratchy. Water. It's important. Ah. That is a bit better. Anyway, as we wheel closer, Decipher lost the license, which is why the game ended in 2007. But while the game ended, it is being, say it with me now, maintained by the fans. Hell yeah, we love to hear it. We love to see it. That water was not enough. There's definitely something in my throat. It is what it is. So there's this thing called the Continuing Committee, which maintains the game as it is now as a fan group. They release their own cards. I think they release their own sets. They hold events and tournaments, and they keep the community for the Star Trek CCG live. They have their own dedicated website. They put out, like I said, updates of their own. They make their own cards. I think the online method you use to play it is something that they keep a track of. I don't think they release that. It's just that it's an application you can use to play the game online. I looked at a video once like 10 months ago or something, and now I forgot all the details. I should write more things down. The point is, a group of dedicated fans, lovers of the game, are keeping it going, and that is always great for me to hear, because you guys know my opinion. I think more card games for more people to try is always good, especially if it's being maintained by a lot of passionate fans. And do not get me wrong, Star Trek does have some very passionate fans. Yes, I know that the franchise itself is in a bit of a slump. There are some not so great new releases for the brand, the IP, etc. But the card game is still, from what I understand, very well loved. Quite enjoyed by the people who grew up playing it, and they want to keep it that way. And that's cool, and I'm very proud of any card game that gets to continue on after death, and Star Trek just happens to be one of those. So if you're curious, definitely go check out the Continuing Committee. They have their own website, like I said. They do really good work. If you have an opportunity to play the game, I hope that you're smarter than me, which isn't hard. Your uncle's a dummy. But I definitely felt swamped while trying to play it. Just a heads up, but I don't think it's a bad game. I just think it's a game that has a very board game-like setup to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my particular cup of tea. So there you have it. The Star Trek CCG, just in time for the Star Trek Universes Beyond set coming out later this year, which, like I said before, is probably going to be a slam dunk. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, Discord, TCG Player, Patreon, eBay. Yeah, those are links. Talk to you guys later. Ciao.